Hey guys, Jeremy here from Christocentric YouTube channel. I'd like to welcome you. Now I've been meaning to do a video about the flat earth for a little while now. This subject has in the last 6 months or so completely blown up in the truther community. Now I mean no disrespect to anybody who believes this theory, and as a follower of Christ and a seeker of truth, I myself have spent many hours researching this subject. Now on that note, it seems obvious to me that the flat earth theory resurgence is a psyop on the truther community. This is a distraction, you guys. This is very clearly a distraction. Now I realize that the arguments for the flat earth may be very compelling, which is why so many truthers are caught up in this thing, as well as myself. But all of this is circumstantial and does not prove a flat earth. With no new evidence and no new science, I have no idea how this theory has gained such a resurgence. And it's also causing huge division amongst the truther community. It has some very good truthers preoccupied and distracted with, once again, no evidence, no new evidence, and no new science, just old arguments. Now, for the record, I don't necessarily believe in the current cosmological models, but I don't believe the Earth is flat either. I think it's round, and I think in this video I'm going to prove it to you. Okay, so the primary argument that I have against the flat earth is this. I live in Vancouver, Canada, and when it is winter here, it is summer in the southern hemisphere. Now I know this for sure because I have friends who live in Australia and New Zealand, and this is what they tell me directly. This really is well known to anybody who travels or known anybody from the southern hemisphere. Also, in Antarctica during the summer months, they have 24 hours of sunlight. This is not possible on the flat earth model. Now this graph shows the hours of sunlight, shows world cities in the hours of sunlight at the winter solstice, that is December 22nd. Now I live in Vancouver, Canada, and I can attest to these times. When I go to work at 7 a.m., it's dark for an hour before the sun comes up. And when I get home after 4, it's either dark or getting dark. I also have a Facebook friend who lives near Sydney, Australia, and he can attest to the long 14.5 hours of sunlight during their summer. Once again, this is just not possible on a flat earth. I don't understand why more flat earthers don't see this. Not one of them on YouTube that I have brought this information to even acknowledge I exist. Some claim this as divine revelation even. And as far as for those who teach that the Bible teaches a flat earth, that is also a mistake, and I will show you this in another section of this video. So if we have the sun moving around the flat earth, and this is the UN flag, and one of the reasons people believe the world is flat, and they are showing it to us in our faces, then the sun would have to be moving a lot faster in these outer rings than it would be in these inner rings. This is not possible. The sun does not change speed during the year, you guys. Also, you would see totally different stars from South America to Australia. You would see different stars in this direction than you would in this direction. But this is not the case. What you see is the same stars rotating around a central point. Okay, and that's only possible on a round Earth. In addition to this, there have been many documentaries showing 24 hours of sunlight for months in Antarctica. Frozen Planet. This is an amazing documentary with some of the most amazing wildlife footage I've ever seen. This series also shows when it's summer in the southern hemisphere, they have months of sunlight for 24 hours a day in Antarctica. This is only possible on a round planet, round Earth, guys. Antarctica, a year on ice. This is an interesting documentary they made just last year in 2014 about a research town in Antarctica. And as the title implies, they spend a year there showing months of summer with 24-hour days of light in the Antarctic summer and months of 24-hour darkness in the Antarctic winter, just like we see on the North Pole. This is only possible on a round Earth, guys. Now, Planet Earth. This is a now famous series that shows wildlife in their own environments from pole to pole. This series shows 24 hours of winter and summer at both poles. Now, this really is the clincher. This is what the South Pole looks like from the Anglo-Australian Observatory in southern Australia. This is also what you see from South Africa and from South America. This shows all the stars spinning around a fixed point in the sky. This too could only happen on a round Earth. Okay, now I realize that the BBC is the mainstream media and they are the truther's enemy. But with the information from my friends in Australia and New Zealand, in addition to the stars rotating around a central point in the southern hemisphere, as well as these documentary films, the obvious conclusion is that the Earth is round. Now, as far as the compelling arguments for the flat Earth, this is the one I find most compelling, okay? This is a picture of the Toronto skyline from 40 miles away. Theoretically, you should not be able to see this as it should be well below the horizon. It is photos like this that hooked me into many hours of study on the flat Earth. Now, after much study, I have found that this is explainable by light refracting in our atmosphere. Refraction, according to dictionary.com, is defined as the change of direction of a ray of light, sound, or heat, or the like, in passing obliquely from one medium into another, in which its wave velocity is different. And seeing as our atmosphere is filled with gases and vapors and particles that light passes through and refracts off of, this is how light can bend in our atmosphere, okay? This is because long red wavelengths refract less than shorter blue wavelengths. And because every wave or particle of light carry the full spectrum from red to blue, the wave bends in the atmosphere. This is especially pronounced or exaggerated when looking over water, where the air just above the water is denser and cooler as well as moister. This bends the light even more than if it were over land. Now, pretty much every picture I've seen flat earthers call evidence is over water. Here we have a diagram of sound waves bending over water. Now, light, water, sound, and heat are all waves and interact the same. This is a measurable and proven fact. Light bends in our atmosphere, you guys. Now, we've all seen this refraction of light in our atmosphere I'm sure, multiple times in our lives. The rainbow is the perfect example of this. This is light bending / refracting in our atmosphere. Do some research on refraction, flat earthers out there. This explains why we can see distances well below the horizon. Okay, guys, now there are those who say that NASA is filled with Luciferian occultist Freemasons who lie to us consistently and show us fake pictures of a round Earth. Therefore, the Earth must be flat. Okay, first of all, I agree. They show us fake pictures consistently, like this one called the Blue Marble, with North America shown completely out of proportion and photoshopped cloud formations. If you do some research on this picture, you will find this. And yes, I agree that NASA as well as other American organizations were seeded with Nazi scientists from Hitler's Germany. This operation was called Operation Paperclip. From 1945 to 1955, now declassified Operation Paperclip granted almost 1,000 Nazi scientists, that many of which were involved with human experimentation and other war crimes in the concentration camps, ended up at the CIA, NASA, and other American organizations. As already stated, this is declassified information and available to anybody who has an internet connection. So yes, NASA lies. NASA is a criminal organization. They are and have been influenced with Nazi occultist illuminists who worship Lucifer. They speak with a forked tongue and worship Saturn, as you see in their insignia. Here's a giant forked tongue, and here's the rings of Saturn. If you haven't seen my video, it's all about Christ, but are you still stuck in the cube of Saturn, Satan? Check that out. It's on my channel. Okay, so here we have Buzz Aldrin, supposedly the second man to ever walk on the moon, with his Freemason ring. Now, any group that takes blood oaths and keeps secrets should not be trusted. Look at these 3 NASA astronauts in the lower right. This is what George Carlin called nassholes. They're worshiping a pyramid. Freemasonry is just another extension of the mystery schools of Babylon and Egypt, who simply put, worship Lucifer and his fallen angels. So yes, NASA is an evil group of Luciferians that lie continuous to us. This does not make the earth flat, and it's quite an assumption to make quite a leap. And just to note, you guys, the flat earth theory is a lot older than NASA. So to say that because NASA lies to us makes the earth flat, I gotta argue with that, you guys. Come on. That's quite an assumption. Another huge argument I have against the flat earth is this. I personally am and have been since a child a stargazer and a bit of an amateur astronomer. I have spent literally hundreds of hours looking and wondering at the sky and cosmos. This is a picture much like my own telescope. It's computerized and will auto-track objects. It has multiple lenses for different magnifications, filters for viewing the sun and eclipses, and is generally just a good beginner scope. Now this telescope, along with multiple pairs of sky-gazing specific binoculars I also possess, have allowed me to see and marvel at the sky and objects in the heavens much closer than with the naked eye. I have personally viewed multiple planets myself, as well as the sun, the moon, and other stars. Now it's clear to me that all these celestial bodies are spheres. These pictures of both Saturn and Mars show definite spheres. The rings encircling Saturn, as well as different views of Mars at different times of the year showing ice at both poles, reveal without a doubt that these planets are spheres. Now the moon, which is much closer and visible to the naked eye, is also clearly a sphere. The shadows created at the lighted and dark area of the moon, shadowed sections, as well as the crater shadows, reveal an orb. My argument is this. My personal observations, not NASA's, show the planets, the moon, the sun are all spheres, you guys. And with the exception of the moon, they all rotate. So why would a God of order and reason one of infinite wisdom and understanding, create the rest of the heavens one way and the earth another. In my personal opinion, this is not reasonable, this is not logical, and this is above all not efficient. Now the God I have come to know is reasonable, is logic, and is efficient. Infinitely so. Okay, now there are many people out there who say the Bible teaches a flat earth. This is simply not true. And with a bit of study into the original languages, we will see the Bible actually teaches a round earth. The scriptures most quoted by flat earthers are the ones that speak of the earth being set upon pillars, as well as those that speak of the earth having four corners. Let's start with the argument in scripture that deals with the four corners of the earth. Okay? So the four corners of the earth are mentioned in Ezekiel 7:2, Isaiah 11:12, Job 37:3, as well as Job 38:13, just to name a few. Okay? Now the Hebrew word used in all these scriptures is kanaf, meaning wings or extremities. Therefore, the proper interpretation of this passage is the extremities or furthest wings of the earth. We certainly don't see the earth as having wings. Why would we think it has corners? Now, when you couple this with the passage from Isaiah 40:22 that states God himself sits on the circle of the earth and the inhabitants are like grasshoppers, and goes on to state that God stretches out the heaven as a curtain and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. This will be of more importance later when I discuss the firmament, which is simply the atmosphere we live in. But for now, Isaiah, with the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, calls the earth a circle. And seeing as the Hebrews had no word for sphere, the earth must be round. Okay? Now this is confirmed in Job 26:10, where it states that God has inscribed a circle on the surface of the waters at the boundary of light and darkness. This means that the shadow between daylight and darkness is curved on the earth. This matches what we see on the earth and is only possible with a round earth, guys. Another common argument by flat earthers is that the Bible teaches that the earth is on pillars. Yes, the Bible speaks about the pillars of the earth in many places. Job 9:6, Psalm 75:3, and Samuel 2:8, just to name a few. And while the Hebrew words in these passages actually vary, they all literally mean pillar, column, or even molten pillar. Now it is clear to me that this is a metaphor, you guys. Only a metaphor. Kind of like saying so-and-so is a pillar of the community, or the Bible is the pillar of truth. Some believe the pillars of the earth are the power and providence of God. 1 Timothy 3:15 says that the church of the living God is the pillar and ground of truth. Clearly this is a metaphor, you guys. And when you add the scripture from Job 26:7, where God says he stretches the north over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing, and when you look at this word, it actually means nothing. It's clear that the earth is not on literal pillars. It's a metaphor. Metaphors are used throughout the Bible. Okay, the firmament, guys. Now there are those who believe that the firmament is a hard dome above the flat earth. But another look at the Genesis account and the original tongues will show that the firmament is the expanse of the atmosphere and not a hard dome covering a flat earth. In this next section of this video, we will Have a look at the Genesis creation account and the original language, and I will show you exactly what the firmament is. Okay, the Genesis creation account. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the word for created here is bara. Now, I realize it only says choose here, but when you do a study on this word, bara implies absolute creation from start to finish. That is to say, God created everything in the universe at this time. Bara implies perfect and complete creation out of nothing. Genesis 1:2 goes on to say, and the earth was without form and void. Now the word was here is the Hebrew word haya, meaning became. So after God had created the universe perfectly, the earth became without form and void. Now this is beyond the study of the flat earth, but many scholars believe that something happened in between verse 1 and verse 2. This is called the gap theory and the subject of a whole other video. Okay? Genesis goes on to say, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the surface of the waters. So, what we are being shown here is darkness covering the earth and the Spirit of God moving, or more accurately interpreted, brooding over the surface of the waters like a hen over her eggs. Now, as far as a young earth is understood scientifically, at this time we see the first single-celled life in the early oceans, as well as an early gaseous atmosphere that scientists believed gassed out from the earth itself. So picture this, if you will. We have an early earth with oceans present and a thick, dark cloud of gases and vapors spewing from the interior of the earth and covering the whole earth completely. We also have the Spirit of God, who is God, brooding over the surface of the water, possibly at work in the creation of the first simple life. Now, as far as these early oceans and early atmosphere are implied here, this is backed up in Job 38:8 and 9, where God speaking very firmly to Job, saying to him, where were you when I created this all, Job? Or who shut up the sea with doors when it brake forth as if issued out of the womb? When I made the cloud the garment thereof, and thick darkness swaddling band thereof. This passage matches Genesis 1:2 perfectly and explains what the darkness was. It was a thick, dark cloud that was encompassing the entire planet of gases and vapor, churning above the oceans below. Okay, Genesis 1:3-5 say, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, and that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So in the interest of time, I'm going to tell you what I see happening in this passage. It was at the moment when God said, let there be light, that he began to disperse this dark cloud of gases to allow light on the earth. This not only allowed light on the surface of the oceans, but gave the earth a day and night cycle, as light from the sun, already created earlier on the first day when God created bara, the heavens and the earth. Now I realize we have been taught that God created the sun, the moon, and the stars on the fourth day of creation, but if you bear with me, I will show you that this is not exactly true. Just bear with me, okay, guys? I will explain this. Now, Genesis 1, 6 through 8 goes on to say, "And God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day." Okay, so the word for made here is not bara, like we seen in Genesis chapter 1:1, implying original creation. The word here is asa, and implies using existing materials to create something new. A new appointment or purpose or accomplishment is what asa implies and means. The word firmament here is the Hebrew word rakia, and although it can be interpreted as a hard beaten out thing, as flat earthers like to use to describe a hard dome over the earth, it is more accurately interpreted as expanse, or the expanse of heaven. Now the word used for heaven here is shamayim, or shamayim. I'm not exactly sure how that's pronounced, but it simply means sky or heaven. So now with this further expansion on the original tongues, we see that the firmament is not a hard dome. What we see God actually saying with a fresh interpretation is this: "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters." And God appointed or accomplished the expanse of heaven, dividing the waters under the firmament, oceans, from the waters above, clouds. And God called the expanse sky. In other words, God was further expanding the atmosphere for the life that God was going to create next. This also reestablished a thick cloud greenhouse covering high above, similar to what we saw in Genesis 1:2. Now, in the interest of time, and because the formation of dry land is not important in regards to the firmament, I will skip day 3 completely. Now in Genesis 1:14-19, God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and for years, and let them be for light in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater to rule the day, and the lesser to rule the night. He made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of the heavens, to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night. And God divided the light from the darkness, and saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the 4th day. Okay, the word used for made here, again, is asa, implying an appointment or appointing, or in this case, reappointing the sun, the moon, and the stars to give light on the earth. Indeed, the sun, the moon, and the stars were not created new, bara, but appointed, asa, to give light on the earth, to give signs, and to give seasons at this time. It is crucial to understand that it is also during this time that God is again dispersing the thick greenhouse of cloud covering, reformed on day 2 when God made the firmament/atmosphere. This also must have been added to on the 3rd day, when major volcanism must have occurred in order to form dry land out of the oceans. But now God is again dispersing this cloud cover for the purpose of allowing light into the atmosphere. So the sun, the moon, and the stars were not created at this time, as we have already seen. They were created bara on the 1st day, but now God is clearing the skies in the atmosphere to allow them to shine upon the earth again. It is also clear that the sun, the moon, and the stars are not in the firmament atmosphere, but rather in space. This is further confirmed on the fifth day of creation when God created bara, the birds to fly in the expanse of heaven. Now clearly where the birds fly, the sun, the moon, and the stars are not. Therefore the sun, the moon, and the stars are in another part of the heaven, you guys, and not in the firmament, although they do produce light in the firmament, okay? It should be noted that most biblical scholars believe the Bible teaches three heavens, okay? The atmosphere, space, and heaven, the abode of God. Paul referred to this as the third heaven. So, in conclusion, guys, the firmament is not a hard dome over the earth. It is the atmosphere we live in, okay? Now, I encourage all of you to study the Bible in this way. Original tongues open up the interpretation vastly and give new accuracy to the scripture. Okay guys, so in conclusion, I have already stated that I believe this flat earth resurgence is a psyop and a distraction on the truther community. So what could we be being distracted from? Well, when you consider that many flat earthers believe the firmament is a hard dome that contains the sun, the moon, and the stars, and space itself does not actually exist, well, how about what is in or what could be in space? For example, the rod of God, quote, technology. This is a technology that shoots a tungsten rod from space at a target on the Earth and causes a huge explosion, basically. And when you consider the recent explosions in China that many believe may have been caused by such a weapon, this may be just one thing we are being distracted from. Have a look at this G.I. Joe retaliation clip where they show this type of weapon being used.
Zeus satellite 1A approaching London. Ordnance live and loaded.
Then I'm going to show you the crater created at the first Chinese explosion, and you can draw your own conclusion.
Gravity does the rest. Observe.
Satellite 1A, we have remote launch authorization. 3, 2, 1, drop.
A rod touches down 8 times faster than a bullet, and with a force significantly greater than a nuclear warhead. None of the fallout. All of the fun.
You will have to answer for this to your Congress, your courts. Correction. They will have to answer to.
So here is the lake created at the first explosion at Tianjin, China. Notice the fracturing around the edges. Does this really look like a chemical explosion to you? Or does this look like an impact? How could this giant lake be created where the chemical plant was? And did you know that this was mere blocks away from the world's most powerful supercomputer? Is somebody sending somebody a message? And what about this second sun being seen all over the world? What about Nibiru or Planet X or this Nemesis star many believe are coming into the solar system? This may just be another thing we are being distracted from. Let's not be distracted any further, guys. Put away the flat earth. It's been debunked.